Hey everybody, this is Graham and Micah here with Brother Telepathy. We are back again with another video. In this video, going to be a little bit different here on this one. So we're going to be going through our draft guide and kind of some different keys that we look at for evaluating each position specifically. Thought this could be informative for folks who were maybe wondering why we have guys ranked that we do, how we came to those decisions. And I know we've talked through it on certain prospect breakdowns and things like that, but we have put, pen to paper and want to just kind of go over some items with you guys on each kind of position here. So, Mike, I'll kind of kick this off to you because you kind of headed up this project here. So why don't you take us through your initial kind of thoughts on this, and then we'll kind of get rolling from there. Hey guys, Graham here, jumping in the editing stage of things here. Wanted to make this note here that we actually recorded this whole thing. We went through offense and defense, realized it was probably too much to digest in one video. So we're actually going to split it up into two parts. So this first part is going to be just the offensive side of the ball. We're going to release another video here, which comes out with details on what we look for in defensive prospects. So just wanted to make that clarification. So I'll make that note at the beginning of the next video. Just wanted to clarify here. We'll get back to the video. Thanks.
Yeah, sure thing. So we felt the need to make as a way to kind of break down our thoughts, as Graham said, as well as kind of give an informative guide to what we look for. So we have our key here. So green is the most important, so usually those are going to be at the top of the list. And then we have our blue. So if you see something in green, it's most important, borderline non-negotiables for a prospect. And if you see blue, it's not necessarily a prerequisite. It could be, but it's personal pluses that we like to see when we evaluate players for each position. So we're going to go through, starting off with quarterback, and we're kind of going to give a list of the things we see. As you can see, there's accuracy, pocket presence, leadership, stuff like that. And then a little bit more towards the bottom, spoiler alert, we're going to see gall and balls, which is a fun one that I put in there, and then no blink. But I'll touch on those more in detail. We'll start off with accuracy. Above all else, you got to be accurate. At the end of the day, that's the job of the position, is to be accurate. So I don't think there's a lot to touch on there. Footwork is heavily tied to that. Shador Sanders is actually what I was looking at when I highlighted this aspect, or this part of the accuracy. Great footwork, and ultimately that's why his short and intermediate accuracy is good, and guys who struggle in that area don't have great footwork. Pocket presence, mobility. Mobility is different from scrambling, and I'm going to elaborate. Mobility is Tom Brady. Tom Brady is a mobile quarterback. He's not a scrambler. The ability to move your body in the pocket, the ability to make those subtle movements, whether stepping to the left, stepping to the right, stepping forward, stepping backwards, to evade defenders is a skill set that will take you far at the next level. So ultimately that's what we have there. And then leadership. Graham can attest to this as well. You have to be a leader, whether it's by your vocal, you have to be a vocal leader, or you have to perform. One of those two has to happen. You're the head of the team, you're the quarterback, all eyes are on you. Leadership is super important. Anticipation, windows are tight, you got to make the throws. You got to see things before they happen. You can't be as Graham said it in our last video, you can't be a see it, throw it type of guy. You got to see those windows open up before they're there. And then stuff in black right here is just stuff that is kind of in the middle ground of, it's obviously super important to have it, but it's not as important as these top four. It's different for each position, obviously, but improvisation. The reason I put this in here is because it's almost a prerequisite in the NFL today. Caleb Williams, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, all of these guys can improvise. So if you're stuck in a box like Kirk Cousins and you can't really make plays outside of script, how useful are you going to be? Decision-making, risk balance. Graham also touched on this in the last video about Cam Ward. I love Cam Ward's ability to have that risk balance where it's like, does he occasionally play hero ball? Sure. But I think he can play within structure, and when it's time to take shots and it's time to, I actually wrote in here that NFL is a matchup-oriented league. I have that right here. So if you have a Justin Jefferson on the perimeter, a couple times a game you want to say, hey, this is not in the script. Let's throw a jump ball to Justin Jefferson and see what happens. And most of the time, it ends up being a positive. I'll touch on these last two, and Graham, you can kind of give me your thoughts, what you think about all of the quarterback criteria together. But no blink. I think that how do you handle adversity? This kind of ties into leadership, but I think it's less of a prerequisite than leadership. No blink. I don't want to bash on Caleb Williams too much. I think that he struggles with this mightily. This is something that we value personally because it's in blue, so just as a reminder for that. Caleb Williams likes to hang his head in the fourth quarter. You know, if it's losing, you can see his body language, his posture. It's just not something that keeps the team as a unit. You know, whenever you're hanging your head and you're down in the dumps, everyone sees it and everyone, you know, follows suit, whether it's for the better or for worse. And then gall and balls. I love this one because this is like my favorite trait for a quarterback. If you can stand in the pocket when it's collapsing, obviously your pocket movement and your mobility can only take you so far. You're going to get hit, and you're going to get hit from free runners. Do you keep the same mechanics and follow through on your throws while the pressure's crashing down, or do you kind of shy away and your mechanics kind of fall off? So those are some things I had. Graham, do you have any thoughts on any of the 8 of those?
Yeah, so let's scroll back up to the top there for me. So obviously, not too much to mention here. Accuracy, that's the most important element of throwing the football, right? It's got to be accurate. So I think that obviously makes a ton of sense. Now, I don't think you have to be pinpoint accurate all the time, depending on the type of quarterback that you are. I think there are some ways in which, you know, to somebody like Patrick Mahomes' strength, I would say that most people probably would not consider Patrick Mahomes one of the most accurate quarterbacks in the NFL. Now, he is accurate enough, so there is a bar for how accurate you have to be. So I think that's why it's in green. You have to be a certain level of accurate to be an NFL quarterback. However, I think when you talk about like perfect accuracy, I think that's something that does have a little bit more wiggle room for me personally. But there's certainly a bar. You have to meet that threshold. So I wanted to make that point there. I think for me, honestly, pocket presence and pocket mobility, I'm glad you touched on the fact that you have to be able to maneuver a muddy pocket. It's not just talking about like pure mobility as a runner like we're talking about with Jalen Milroe or Lamar Jackson. I think that's something that, again, after watching Will Levis this year, is something that I really am going to value going forward. That was one of Jaden Daniels' best elements, in my opinion. He was completely unflappable in the pocket, just super cool, calm, and collected back there. Again, a big reason why we love Cam Ward as a prospect this year. And that kind of ties into leadership, too. Having that dog mentality. Yeah, when everybody's got their eyes on you, how are you going to perform? So that goes right in line with that, too. And then anticipation is a huge factor as well. You got to be able to throw within the timing of the offense, because a lot of offenses now in the NFL are based on timing and throwing with anticipation. So that's obviously a massively important element at this point. So everything else you touched on, I would agree with 100% on you. Just wanted to kind of highlight a couple of things there that you mentioned.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said something about accuracy and how it varies, because ultimately all of these vary. No prospect has perfect accuracy, pocket presence, leadership, anticipation. No quarterback prospect is going to have all of the things. There are varying levels. Accuracy just happens to be the most important, as followed by pocket presence and all those sort of things. So I'm glad you mentioned that. Accuracy changes, especially if you have a quarterback like Mahomes, where accuracy isn't his game. His game is his improvisation, his pocket presence. That's his game, and he's elite at those. So I'm glad you made that distinction. I'm also not going to touch as much on these positions as I did on quarterback, or else this will be an 80-minute video, so we're just not going to do that. Running backs I will touch on, however, though, super quick. Vision, explosiveness, toughness. I think those 3 are, well, I don't have toughness highlighted, but I think being tough is a plus. Vision and explosiveness. You have to be able to see holes, and you have to be able to explode through them. At the end of the day, if you can do those 2 things, you're likely going to be a successful running back. I also have lateral movement, and then personal for me is the receiving ability. I mentioned up here that I believe in a committee backfield. That's kind of the direction the NFL is going. You know, aside from a few examples, your Saquon Barkley's, your Josh Jacobs, your Derrick Henry's. But I think that a committee backfield where you ride the hot hand typically works out the best. And if you can get the ball in the hands of your best runners against the worst tacklers, particularly in the receiving game, worst tacklers being DBs, it's going to create massive advantages for you. So, Graham, do you have any thoughts on any of that?
Yeah, you touched on everything I would highlight. The only thing I'll add to this is with vision, I would pair that with patience, actually. And so we've seen somebody like Le'Veon Bell just be absolutely incredible at this. And it takes a certain type of offensive line, certain type of scheme for that. And I can see you doing the brother telepathy.
That's brother telepathy.
The motion there, yeah.
That might need to be our thing, is where we say that when it happens. And I guess it's not going to be for the viewers. It'll be for us to know, is whenever we're reading each other's mind. Because it happens more often than not.
We already know we're reading each other's minds, so we don't even need to say anything.
That's actually a good point.
No, but yeah, so I would definitely pair patience in there with that because a part of vision is seeing the hole before it's there, making certain cuts before it becomes available to you. So I think there is a patience element within that. So other than that, though, I'm fully on board with you. I probably would put toughness in green looking back at this. I think that's mightily important for a running back in the NFL these days. Oh, there you go. Appreciate that.
Oh, ugly
Yeah,
green, but
no, everybody gets the point. So yeah, toughness is essential at running back. The amount of hits you're taking per game, you're essentially in a car crash every week. For all these players, but especially at running back, you're taking a toll. So I think the committee makes sense as well. So yeah, let's turn it over to receivers where this is kind of maybe our bread and butter. But yeah, why don't you talk a little bit about receivers?
yeah, and receiver. We both played. We don't want to kill this, but you can read all this. I went pretty extensive on this one, but I'll just touch on the big aspects of it. I don't, and I'm sure you feel the same way, and you can kind of let me know your thoughts. I'm not super impressed with your DK Metcalf build guys. Your 6'5", run a 4.3. Like, I value the technicalities and the mundane work in being a receiver some of the most. I think that separation, which I have in all caps here, is the most strong indicator of success in the NFL. I think that there are guys like your Quentin Johnston who suck at separation, and he had it's harsh wording, but he had bust written on his forehead for me. And there's a lot of guys like that in the NFL. J.J. Arcega-Whiteside with the Eagles out of Stanford. So many guys who lack separation in college who don't translate. And I think that guys who do separate well in college do translate. So I think that that's the most important. Hands, this irks me so much, and I know you can talk about it too. Watching the college football playoff was so frustrating with the amount of guys that drop passes. And because Graham and I are slow white guys, this is stuff we had to rely on. So I think that this is stuff right here that will, if you don't drop the ball, you'll likely keep getting thrown to, and you'll likely keep having production. If you drop the ball, that's your job as a receiver. Same as being accurate as a quarterback, you got to catch the ball if you're a receiver. Craftiness, I'm not going to touch on too much. Being a crafty route runner, being savvy route runner at the line of scrimmage, during the routes, maybe leaning into guys, drawing a penalty, stuff like that is crafty. Acceleration and deceleration. I almost had this in green because, as I have written here, this is Luka Doncic. If you have breaks, if you have acceleration, you're going to be more beneficial than a guy, as I have written here, 4.3 with one gear. So I think that's super important. Twitch. This is Matthew Golden. This is Elick Ayomanor in the red zone. Can you make those micro adjustments when the ball is in the air? And then willing blocker. This is just something that I love. Obviously, receivers are divas. Receivers are guys that are, don't want to get touched. They want to celebrate in the end zone. They want to get all the girls. That's being a receiver. But if you're a willing blocker and you'll be a football player and stick your nose in there, I value that pretty highly.
Yeah, and obviously somebody like the Los Angeles Rams does too. Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp. These guys are very willing run blockers, and so I think I'm glad that we added that in there because to me that's super important as well. Being out of the perimeter, got to make those blocks, and so I'm with you on that. The willingness as well is a piece of that too, so I think that's a massive part of it as well. Yeah, I think in terms of route running, you broke it down really well. I think like the acceleration, deceleration is essentially just how you temper your routes. Basically how you come out of breaks, that sort of thing. That's all a part of separation and in general route running. So you're right. You don't want to have one gear when you're running routes because if you're running full speed all the time, in a certain way, you may not be able to find a certain window in the zone coverage, or you may not be able to separate as effectively because the DB already knows your tendencies. So definitely a big thing. And then hands. It sounds so obvious, but you got to catch the ball. That's the job as a receiver. So I'm with you that that's certainly something that if you don't have good hands, that's something that immediately tips off you and I both for maybe this isn't the best prospect in the world. So if you've got a high drop percentage, we're probably not going to have you very high on our list. So I think you covered everything else I would add though with receiver.
Yeah, and again, this is going to be an 80-minute video, so I'm going to blow through these. Tight end. At the end of the day, I want somebody fun. I want somebody reliable, consistent. That's the main job. Is you're the quarterback's security blanket. I got a little ahead of myself bringing the fun down here, but if you're reliable and you're consistent, that's basically all I want from you. I think athletic makeup and profile is important as well. I think the three positions that I care about that I have listed here is offensive line, defensive line, and tight end. Tight end can just create so many mismatches with your athletic profile. get the party started / intensity. This is what we called it in high school. Is whenever you have the opportunity to pull, you have the opportunity to blindside guys. Whenever you're running your wham concepts, whenever you're running anything where the tight end's moving on unsuspecting people, you want to take pride in doing that, and you want to be happy with doing it. And then fun. I think that having a guy like this to be fun. Again, this is like the least important out of all the things on this entire list is fun. It sounds dumb, but it's a tough gig. I think if you have somebody who can make the tough moments lighthearted, it'll go a long way. You have any thoughts on that?
I think you just need somebody with elite versatility as a tight end. You have to obviously catch passes. You got to block guys. You got to run routes. You got to run clear out routes. You got to be willing to, like you said, pull, run trap concepts, things like that. So you got to have a lot of versatility as a tight end. So I think the point you make there about being consistent is exactly right. Often you hear about NFL analysts talking about how young quarterbacks really thrive from having like the kind of their go-to guy, and I think tight ends are an easy option for that because of their big frame, their athleticism, and that sort of thing. So definitely something there. And then you certainly want somebody that can block too. That kind of goes with versatility because you do obviously have somebody that's at this point in the NFL landscape, somebody who's essentially like another receiver. But a tight end blocks a lot too, and there's a lot of value in that. And even guys like Travis Kelce, who are more of your receiving types, they got to be good blockers too. So
Yeah.
nowadays in the NFL, you kind of have like your more Y inline tight end. You got some H back type of positions like a Chigakonkwo for my Titans fans out there, who's more of like that H back role, more of like a receiving tight end. So there's kind of some differentiators at this point in the NFL too. But I think all of that certainly goes into it, like you said.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought the versatility up because I certainly should have added it in here. But versatility is one of these green things for tight ends. If you're reliable, consistent, and versatile, you'll succeed. Offensive line, entirely a position of want to. Mentality. This is you're in the worst, least desirable spot on the field. You're the muddy, least amount of praise. I love my offensive linemen out there. These are your guys who will give maximum effort on each play, as I have listed here. Trying to read and talk at the same time while scrolling can be a little bit difficult in the brain, but I'm doing my best. We got heavy hands and quick feet. On a more technical aspect, you got to have a quick first step, especially with these edge rushers. Your James Pierces coming off the end with incredible bend, which we'll talk about when we get to the defensive line, but you got to be able to get the first step on these guys because if you're not getting the first step, you're going to lose. And then heavy hands, particularly for your interior guys. You want to stop momentum. You want to die. I actually have it right here with the mentality. You want to die a slow death. If you're going to lose, you want to lose slowly. Being on the offensive line is so tough. I have so much respect for those guys. And then athletic makeup and profile I touched on earlier, so I don't need to say too much on that. Graham, you got anything? You want me to go straight to D-line?
Yeah, just quick notes there. In line with heavy hands and quick feet, I think a strong base is obviously important too because you do have different types of edge rushers you're going up against. So you've got those speed guys like your Abdul Carters and different things like that. So that's kind of where you need that quick first step like you talked about there, Micah. But then you also, you need that strong base too because there are certainly power rushers that you're going up against as well. So if you can have a blend of both quickness and power in your base so you're not getting knocked backwards when you do get hands on that edge rusher, that's of utmost importance as well, especially for like an offensive tackle on an island by yourself there. And then on the heavy hands piece, do you latch onto that your guy you're blocking there and do you let go? And this is not a holding consideration. It's more so like you need to have that firm clasp on that guy and not let them knock your hands off or anything like that. So
Sure.
Yeah, certainly a lot of dirty work there for an offensive lineman. No recognition oftentimes. So really, really admirable position for them to get the work done and they make it all go. Teams are built in the trenches, offensively and defensively. Best teams in the NFL have elite offensive lines. Eagles, Lions, all these different teams have great offensive lines. So. All right, here again for the outro of the video. As previously mentioned, that was the offensive side of the ball. We'll be doing defense next, so stay tuned for our part 2 on this video feature here, going through our draft guide. Let us know if you guys disagree with anything, if you wanted to add anything to what we're saying here in terms of what you would look for in a prospect, but appreciate the time. Again, wanted to provide some clarity on what we look for exactly. So yeah, we'll see you in the next video.